Hello there everyone, and this one is called How to Make a Blackberry and Apple Pie. Now we're getting deep into shamanic practice here. So to make your blackberry and apple pie, the first thing you need of course is your blackberries. So because they're up in the north of England, at the moment they're this colour, which means they are not ripe. Oh, but hang on a moment, just look over there. There's a couple, they're getting close. Right, I need to have a bit more of a look. This is better than I expected. I honestly had imagined I would need to go and get the frozen ones, which I picked last summer out of the fridge, but I did just see a couple of, oh, there's one. Right, so it looks as if I'm going to be able to start picking the blackberries for the blackberry and apple pie today, which is great. So deep shamanic practice, why? Because it gets us in touch with nature. Because again, in order to make a blackberry and apple pie, the first thing you do is you go out and start looking for your blackberries. It just gets you in tune, doesn't it? And I can see a number which are starting to ripen. They're going a reddish colour. That's close. Very good. Oh look, now there we are. How about that? Now if you live in the south of England, you've been picking blackberries for probably maybe a month, maybe 6 weeks, maybe longer, but up here that is magnificent. So there we are, we're off. There's something about picking in the wild which just trumps every other form of obtaining food. It's just the best. So there we are. So this pie is going to have some fresh ones, which is more than I dared hope, and that's probably why my intuition told me to wait until today, because I was out a few days ago and there was nothing, but now I've actually accumulated what I can only call a handful, which is wicked. So off we go back home to make a pie. Now back in the kitchen, I did a lot better than I expected. So really decent collection of blackberries for the very first pick. So now it's time to make the pastry, and to be honest, if you want to do a decent job and you want quality, I recommend white spelt flour. If you use wholemeal flour, you're just not going to get such a good result. It really is worth using this. And I'm using spelt flour because it's an ancient grain, which means it's much less glutinous than your modern flours that you buy. So I've got 250 grams, which I've weighed out using this digital scale over here. So I've got 250 grams of flour in the pastry bowl, a very light sprinkling, a little bit of Himalayan or sea salt in there, not much at all. And the next thing I need to do is to weigh the butter. So I've got 250 grams of flour, so I'm going to want exactly half that amount of butter. I'm going to want 125 grams. Now, it's fussy, but I do like to use a salt-free grass-fed butter, just because it's the best you can get. So as butter comes in 250 grams slab, all I've got to do is cut it in half. Now when you're making pastry, it's important that the butter is cold, straight out of the fridge. So there we are, that's very slightly too much, 131, only 125. Let's put the other piece in. 119, so just a tiny fragment extra. That'll do. So what you do with pastry is as follows. You get your butter, and I like to use a knife and just literally hack it up like this and throw it, or let it fall into the flour. This just makes what I'm about to do slightly easier. So the secret of making pastry is peculiar because it's the opposite of bread. When you make bread, it's good to touch the bread as much as possible. With pastry, we want to have as light and as delicate a touch as we can. But having said that, the first thing we have to do is to get totally immersed in it, because what I have to do is I have to rub the butter into the flour, and I literally just got to grab hold of the flour and the butter, and I've just got to do this movement where I'm literally just rubbing the flour and the butter together. So what's happening is a big lump of butter is breaking up into smaller lumps and smaller lumps and smaller lumps, and the more I carry on doing this, the smaller the fragments of butter get, until they're very small. And by the time they're very small, that is the first part of the pastry making operation done. This is what we call rubbing in. Very straightforward. This is going to take me a good 5 minutes, so I'm just going to turn the camera off while I continue. So we're now well on the way. All the big lumps have been broken down, but I've still got some fairly small lumps. I'll just give it another couple of minutes until they're rubbed in. It really doesn't matter, to be honest. It's all just a matter of how you feel about these things. The smaller the lumps, the more perfect the pastry is going to be, but does that really matter? It's up to you. So I'll just finish doing that for another couple of minutes. So there you are, that's good enough for me. So now it's down to that small size of fragment of butter. The next thing to do is just rub what you've got left off your hands. You can even use a knife to scrape the remains off. Not as painful as it looks. And then once you've done that, you want to go and wash your hands and be prepared for the next operation, which is very, very different. So I've given my hands a good wash, and I'm now ready for the next stage. And we go hands off now, because we're going to be using a spoon. Wooden spoon is best. And I'm going to be adding a small amount of water. Now here's the thing. This is a very critical part of the process. Put less than you think. So I'm just going to mix that water in, and it's going to start to form clumps straight away. It will start to stick to the side of the bowl. Now the amount of water I put in there was almost right. I need a tiny fraction more, because what I'm doing is I'm stirring it up until it makes a solid lump. It's very close. And that should do it. So I just keep literally stirring it up till it makes a solid lump, which that just about has done. And then what I need to do is to put this into the fridge for half an hour. Very important detail. So I can literally just take that out of there, put it into the bowl, get the last fragments out. Right. And just put that in the fridge. Half an hour later it'll be ready to work with. So now the pastry is in the fridge cooling off. Next step is to deal with the apples. Now my secret for making a really great apple pie, bearing in mind I don't want to eat refined sugar, is to use a nice sweet dessert apple. These are called Royal Galas, and what I want to do now is to peel them. Some people don't do this, but if you really want to enjoy your pie experience, the last thing you want to be doing is messing around with bits of peel stuck in your teeth. So these are organic Royal Gala apples from my local farm shop. So all I've got to do is to peel them, and once each one is peeled, I just use my knife like this, and I literally just slice thin fragments off, going all the way around. So most people, when they make apple pies, they will use a cooking apple, and I just can't see the point of this, because they are so sour you have to add loads of sugar. So why not choose an apple which is naturally sweet? So that's why I do what I do. And once I've cut all the bits off, I just carry on. Now before I just get a couple of pips out of there, before I want to heat these apples up, I'm going to put a little bit of water in the bottom. So let's put a little bit of water in the bottom of the pan. Doesn't need that much, maybe a fraction more. Literally half a centimetre in the bottom of the pan will do. And you'll find the longer you do this for, the more adept you'll get, till it becomes second nature. So yeah, if you make a lot of blackberry and apple pies, you'll find this really easy. And you can buy fancy devices which cause your apples to be cut into uniform pieces, and it leaves you a totally rubbish quality pie. It's so much better to have the randomness in the whole process. So I'm going to keep doing this until all my apples are peeled. So I'm going to introduce you to what I like to do, which is I turn the gas on and have it as low as possible. And I'm just going to leave the gas low like that. It will take longer, but you get a really nice result. It's tiny little salt, just a few crystals. That will plenty, don't need much. Tiny amount of salt. What that does is that draws the sweetness out of the apples. Really worth doing that. So I'm going to carry on with my apple peeling and slicing. So here I am peeling my final apple. Depends on the size, of course, as to how many you're going to want to add. And this is peeling technique beloved of retreats. It's called All Around the World. So you just keep going in this horizontal motion all the way around until finally it's done, and it's all in one piece, which is unnecessary but cool. And so then the last bit of slicing going in here now. So I'll show you how much is in the pan in a moment. Something deeply satisfying about all these simple processes. If one or two pips end up in there, I don't mind that. They're very anti-cancer, useful nutrients. So there we go, that's what it looks like. I've got a tiny amount of salt, literally just a pinch of salt in there. I've got the water, I've got the apples, and now it's time to add the blackberries. So I'm going to put this entire collection in here. I'm not going to wash them, because what do I want to put chlorinated water on them for when they've actually been washed in the rain only this morning? So in they go. Make sure they're above dog pissing height, obviously, when you're picking your blackberries. Very important, obvious thing to think about. And all I've got to do now is to put the lid on there and come and check that in 10 or 15 minutes time and see how it's doing. The pastry is still in the fridge, that needs to be given a bit longer. So the only other thing I need to do is to turn the oven on. So because I've got a modern oven which is run on 13 amp electricity rather than the more powerful old-fashioned ovens, I'm having to put my oven on nice and early. So I'm putting on at just around 200 degrees Celsius, and it'll take me a good 20 minutes to get this oven up to temperature. That's why I've put it on so early. So you don't have to do it this way. You could just literally ram the whole thing up full pelt to boiling point and let it simmer for 10 minutes. But I like to just have it on low heat and leave it alone for about 20 minutes or so and come back, and it'll be absolutely perfect. So it's time for me to correct myself. It really only takes 10 minutes from the beginning, from cold, just on the lowest possible heat setting. And look what's happened to the colour. So this is the magic. It's when you get this wonderful colour change. So that is so well done, I can literally just turn that off now. So here's where we pull the whole thing together. So the apples are nicely done already there. Now you may wonder why it is I use 250 grams of flour and 125 grams of butter. Yeah, 2 to 1. The reason why is because of this. Best thing to make a blackberry and apple pie on is not a pie dish, which is designed for the job. Much better to get yourself one of these, which is a nice old-fashioned Pyrex plate from a charity shop. It does such a much better job. So I'm going to get a little bit of butter. I could use coconut oil, whichever, and I'm just going to smear this over the Pyrex surface. This is to stop the pie from sticking to the plate. So that's ready. So all I've got to do now is to actually roll out the pastry. So here it is. Now I need half for the top and half for the bottom, pretty obviously. So what I'll do is I'll get this lump out, wipe off the little bits in the bottom of the bowl. That's it. And I'll just cut that into 2 pieces. So sprinkle some flour onto the board where I'm going to roll it out with. Just make it into the very approximate shape. Turn it over the other way so it's floured both sides. And now I get my rolling pin and I roll and turn and roll and turn and roll and turn. If I keep rolling and turning, it'll come out approximately round. That's what I'm aiming at. So the trick with this is to roll it out so that it's of an even thickness, and the bit that needs to be rolled out is always the bits at the edges, which tend to be a bit thick. Now I've reached the point where I need some more flour on this board, so I'll just put some more on. Pick it up, turn it the other way. Now it's almost the right size, you can see, it's nearly there. So I just got to roll it out a little bit more until it's going to fit. Right, that's about it. So now the trickiest bit of all, fold it so it's half, put the plate on, lay it on and over the half, put that over the other side there, and then using a knife just cut off the extra all the way around. Now you might think, so what I'll do is I'll put a load of apple and blackberries onto that. No, I will not. I will leave it over there. I'll get this second bit of pastry out. It's worth being generous with the flour. As before, make it into a round, turn it over, both ends are floured, and start rolling out as before. So the reason why we're getting this piece all prepared in advance is because as soon as your pie is made, it needs to go straight in the oven. If you make your pie and leave it sitting there on the side for 5 minutes, end up with a complete mess. Really important little detail, this. I can also sprinkle a little bit of the flour on top there too. That's it. And just keep going, making it bigger and bigger. So if you roll it out too thin, when you try and pick it up, it will just fall apart in your hands. If you roll it out too thick, it it won't be such a lovely consistency. Well, I'm just about there now. This is not a very round one, is it? That's because I'm filming it for YouTube, to be expected, isn't it, really? But all I'm concerned about is it going to fit? Yes, it is just about. So just roll that one a bit more that way. Yeah, that's going to fit now, which means I'm ready. So what I need to do, I need to have a little container with some water in it. This is totally crucial. Right, so literally they're bringing it all together. Now what I need is a spoon with holes in. Well, before I do any of that, I use my secret trick. Get a little bit of creamed coconut. Creamed coconut you can get from supermarkets and Asian wholesalers, and just put a little bit of this creamed coconut in the bottom of the dish. And what that will do is that will soak up any excess moisture that's in the fruit mixture. So you can make this recipe with any fruit combination, but you want like a hard fruit like an apple or a pear, and then blackberry, blueberry, loganberry, whatever berry you like. I've even got some joster berries I'm going to try next time. So now all I do is get the excess water off and just literally add it. Now we just, that's it, there you go. Let the extra water drip off and just keep adding the fruit. And spread it as evenly as possible. So I ended up with a total of 7 apples. They're only medium-sized ones. And we're about there now. Right. Last few fragments, drain the juice off, and we're done. All I do now is I get some cold water and I just dip my fingers in the cold water and I run the cold water over the rim like this. This is the glue. It's going to make it work. And then I get the top piece, fold it in half, lay it on halfway, and then bring it back over. And now I need to use the knife as before and just cut off the excess. So you end up with a bit of extra. You can always use that to make jam tarts, anything you like. And I'll just go around doing this, which makes it look like a pie suddenly. The very final touch of all that is to allow the steam to escape, so it's ready to go in. So all we need to do is to put it in. So it's in there, so I will come back about 15 minutes later to check on it. It takes about 20 minutes, so probably 20 minutes is actually what will do it, but I'll check it after 15 and I'll be looking to see if the crust is brown of the pastry. So let's have a look. So it's had 15 minutes. And you can see there's no browning on the top, so we need to give it a bit longer. I'm going to give it another 8 minutes and it should be alright by then. So I've given it another 8 minutes and I can see that it's just browning around the edges, so I'm going to declare that done. So that's it. So the hardest part is to come now, and that's waiting for it to cool until it can be eaten. There we go. Blackberry apple pie.